Clint Eastwood has always been Hollywood's man of mystery, the stoic cowboy, the silent detective, the director who could make audiences shiver with a look instead of a speech. Yet, behind those squinted eyes and quiet smirks lay a private world of passion, longing, and what-ifs. Few people know that 7 women, each powerful and unforgettable in her own right, shaped the emotional core of the man the world calls an icon. Some he loved, some he admired from afar, and some slipped through his fingers, but each left a mark deep enough to last a lifetime. When Eastwood first burst into fame in the 1960s, Hollywood was shifting. Gone were the days of polished studio romance. A new realism had taken hold. Amid this, Clint's quiet masculinity fascinated women who'd seen every kind of leading man come and go. He didn't chase glamour, it came to him. Still, there were a handful of women who made him stop, who made the unflappable gunslinger forget the script. These are the 7 women Clint Eastwood wanted most, the ones who challenged, tempted, and haunted him. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Number 7 was Marilyn Monroe, the woman whose myth could outshine almost anyone. By the time Clint's star began to rise, Marilyn's flame had already begun to flicker. She was the ultimate Hollywood fantasy, the blonde dream every man wanted but few could handle. Clint once admitted in an early interview that Monroe was every director's temptation. Friends of Eastwood say he kept a photograph of her in his dressing room on the Rawhide set, not as a trophy, but as a symbol of allure, of fragility, and of everything fame could destroy. They never met in person, though a studio assistant once claimed Clint sent flowers to her Beverly Hills address weeks before she died. Whether or not that's true, he spoke of her years later with a sadness that never left his voice. To him, Marilyn was the unattainable, a ghost that reminded him how quickly beauty could vanish in Hollywood's glare. If Monroe was the dream, Sophia Loren was the awakening. By the early 60s, Loren embodied a different kind of power, confidence without apology. She was Italy's answer to the American bombshell, radiant, articulate, and grounded. When Clint met her briefly during the filming of The Witches in Rome, observers said the chemistry was instant. He described her later as the kind of woman who didn't need Hollywood to tell her she was extraordinary. Rumor has it they shared a long dinner overlooking the Tiber River, speaking mostly through glances and pauses. It was never a love affair, but more a meeting of energies, the rugged American loner and the European queen who had conquered the world on her terms. To Clint, Loren represented something timeless, elegance without pretense, power wrapped in warmth. Years later, when asked who he believed was the most beautiful woman he ever met, he didn't hesitate before whispering her name. Then came Brigitte Bardot, the French whirlwind who defined freedom in the 1960s. Unlike Loren's grace or Monroe's vulnerability, Bardot radiated rebellion. She lived by her own rules, unafraid to shock, to speak, to seduce. During the production of a small European film festival event, Eastwood and Bardot were seated together at a gala dinner in Cannes. Witnesses said Clint, typically reserved, was visibly captivated. Bardot laughed easily, touching his arm as if they'd known each other for years. For one brief week, paparazzi spotted them strolling along the Riviera, though both denied any romance. Decades later, Bardot recalled him as a man of quiet danger, too silent for a Frenchwoman. Whether anything happened or not, their brief encounter fueled endless speculation. For Eastwood, Bardot symbolized the wildness he rarely let himself embrace, the unpredictable spark he both craved and feared. Number 4 on the list is one who was never just a co-star or a muse, Faye Dunaway, the actress who embodied sophistication and fire. By the time Clint and Faye crossed paths, she had already electrified the world with Bonnie and Clyde. Clint was fascinated by her control, her intelligence, her refusal to play the Hollywood darling. They nearly starred together in a thriller in the early 1970s, but the project collapsed before filming began. Insiders whispered that creative disagreements masked a deeper tension, a traction that neither dared pursue. Years later, Dunaway admitted that she found Eastwood fascinating, infuriating, and incredibly private. He, in turn, said she was too sharp to ever be underestimated. In another life, they might have been perfect. In this one, they circled each other like two predators who knew the cost of the hunt. Number 3 was Anne Margaret, the fiery redhead who matched Clint's energy punch for punch. She was all laughter and movement, with a sensuality that filled every frame she appeared in. When they first met at a Warner Brothers party in the late 60s, she'd already been Elvis Presley's screen partner, the woman who made audiences forget the rules of good behavior. Clint was smitten by her combination of innocence and daring. They shared several dinners in Los Angeles, sparking rumors that flew through the tabloids. Anne Margaret later said, "Only he was kind. He listened." That was her way of keeping the mystery alive. Those close to Clint say she represented something rare for him: joy without burden. In her, he saw what life could be if he stopped brooding, if he let himself dance. But his career demanded focus, and she moved on to her next adventure. Still, when he directed musical sequences decades later, some say he borrowed her rhythm. The way she made emotion move to music. Second place goes to a woman whose story intertwined with his for years, Sondra Locke. She wasn't just a flame or a rumor. She was his partner, collaborator, and mirror. They met on the set of The Outlaw Josie Wales in 1975, and their connection was immediate. Locke was unlike anyone Clint had known. Fiercely intelligent, politically outspoken, and determined to carve her own path. Their relationship lasted over a decade, filled with passion, creativity, and controversy. They lived together, fought publicly, and made 6 films side by side. But Hollywood wasn't kind to strong women who challenged their partners, and their eventual split became one of the industry's most painful public breakups. Still, even in later years, Clint admitted she changed him, made him introspective, pushed him to grow beyond the silent hero archetype. In his quieter moments, friends say he called her the woman who understood the man behind the myth. Whatever pain lingered, the impact was undeniable. And then there was the woman who, more than any other, held a place Clint Eastwood could never quite define. Her name was Frances Fisher. She met him when he was already a legend, directing and starring in Unforgiven. Frances was younger, fiery, and filled with artistic hunger. Together they created not just art, but life, their daughter Francesca. Unlike many of Clint's past relationships, this one had a sense of calm. They shared laughter, a home, and the kind of intimacy that comes from mutual respect. But even then, Clint remained the wanderer, restless and uncertain about belonging to anyone completely. Frances has since said she has no regrets, that Clint taught her patience and resilience. For him, she symbolized family, the thing his career had always kept just out of reach. If these 7 women defined the contours of Eastwood's emotional life, they also charted Hollywood's evolution. From Monroe's fragility to Lauren's command, from Bardot's freedom to Dunaway's intellect, from Anne Margaret's fire to Locke's rebellion, and finally to Fisher's groundedness, each reflected a phase of both Clint's career and the changing face of womanhood on screen. To look at them is to see how Clint's own image evolved, the rugged loner learning, bit by bit, to understand connection. People close to Eastwood often say he loved women, not as trophies, but as puzzles, each one a world he wanted to explore, but never conquer. His fascination was rarely about possession. It was about respect, curiosity, and the quiet longing for understanding. That's why he could speak fondly of them decades later without bitterness. In interviews, he's careful, sometimes evasive, but when a journalist once asked if he believed in true love, Clint paused before answering, "Maybe it's not about one person. Maybe it's about the moments we share with the right ones when they come along. There are moments in every legend's life that never make it into the movies. The private laughter, the unspoken goodbyes, the love letters burned or lost. For Clint Eastwood, These 7 women formed that unseen script. They reminded him, and us, that even the toughest cowboy has a heart that can break. Perhaps that's why his films grew softer with age, more reflective. The man who once spoke with bullets and glares began to write with silence and regret. Love had humbled him. In the end, what these women gave Clint Eastwood wasn't just romance or scandal. They gave him empathy. They taught him that strength isn't about standing alone, but about being vulnerable enough to care deeply. Whether it was Marilyn's tragic glow, Sophia's grace, Bridget's defiance, Faye's intellect and Margaret's joy, Saunders' challenge, or Francis's tenderness, each showed him a different face of love. Together, they painted the portrait of a man still searching for peace, still chasing the horizon, still asking himself if a legend can ever truly be known.